Welcome, Adam, to the Growth Concept Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on this episode to share your wisdom and expertise over mental health, with it being such an important topic these days. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
With viewing your LinkedIn, I noticed that you're specialised in more of the younger youth of people on the mental health side of things. Do you mind explaining to me why you do this and why it's so important to you?
It's grounded in my story. So there's it's kind of naturally, organically spilling outside of schools. So we're starting to do a lot with with sporting clubs, with some NBL1 teams. I even had conversation this year with Western 4. So it's kind of, and then some corporate presentations as well. That's all spilling out. And that's, I like that because it's new and fresh because I've been doing it for so long. But schools will never change. It's kind of the heart of what we do because of what happened to me. When I'm speaking, whoever I'm speaking to, actually, I always ask the question, what was school like for you? Because, primary school was great for me and high school sucked and sucked in a big way. And so
do you think it was an age thing or an environment thing that impacted that?
It was probably environment mostly. Like, beginning of primary school, I was the fastest kid for 4 years, and so everyone likes a fast kid in primary school, and that was good. Whereas there was stuff happening outside of school that meant that I was really struggling and experiencing some emotional abuse, etc. And so I wasn't in a good place at all, finding my identity and my value in running, and then I lost it in year 4 because of stress and eczema in the family. And so I had bubbles that covered both of my feet, so I was given cortisone tablets or injections. Mum and Dad told me different stories. So being on the roids in year 4 doesn't end well for anybody. So I doubled in size, lost my speed, my popularity, the bullying started, and it kind of began to spiral out of control from there and got worse in high school. So environment definitely.
So with all that process, would you say that high school transition was one of the toughest times when you were growing up?
Yep. Yeah. So 45 years old now, I've struggled with anxiety and depression for 15 of those 45 years. The longest period was high school, and potentially the worst, if not, probably equal with another period in my 30s. The bullying didn't really get severe until I hit high school. My own friends turned on me in year 7, so that wasn't good. And because of that, I didn't find friends until the middle of year 9. So I went a year and a half with no friends, and that meant that I was an open target for bullying. And so the bullying started day 1. It never stopped, to the point where by the end of year 12, 180 students, 90 to 95 guys, there were 58 guys that were bullying me every single day. Spoken to my old school, and I've stood at the graduating photo and counted because I don't have any photos of the period. But parents divorcing in year 8 was tough, but the bullying was what caused, I had massive mental health issues in a period where no one was talking about it. So I had no idea what was happening. I just had extreme anxiety and depression. I would wake up feeling sick, afraid to go to school every single day.
And you didn't feel like you could talk to anyone?
I didn't know I should. So not only did I not feel comfortable talking to anyone because I grew up with a very kind of old school army man, stoic type father.
Yeah.
So you man up and shut up and sweep it under the rug, and you just don't address it. I mean, parents went through a divorce. We never even talked about it at all. Not a single sentence was uttered about the fact that mum and dad were divorcing. They just got on with it. And so, being bullied every single day, that anxiety and depression led me to the point in the middle of year 10 of having a plan in place to take my own life. And that's how severe it got. And it didn't change until I got out of school.
Yeah.
So I passed year 12 by 2%, even though I was in the advanced classes in primary school in year 5 and 6 in the P8 program. So
with all that being said, what do you feel is your true mission right now in life?
It's hard to summarize. I think trying to create psychologically safe spaces for young people and equipping them with the tools to deal with the same stuff that I struggled with. So I'm very open and real and honest and authentic about what I've experienced or what I've been through, and wanting to reach back and trying to help with the same stuff. Bullying was the first presentation that I wrote. There's 25 that we do now, but that's where it started because that was the experience that I had. So wanting to reach back and help. I mentioned to you off air that my grandma's the reason why I survived my teenage years. And she was like an anchor for me, and trying to provide that anchor for other young people, whether it's the stuff we do in schools or the camps that we run, etc. So trying to equip, basically arm people to deal with the problems they face, hence the name. That's kind of the mission and the drive, whatever avenue that takes. There's 25 presentations, 10 programs, 3 camps.
So like camps is in people can go to see that
So
advice.
we have 10 years ago, we started a resilience and mental health camp. That happens in July now, that runs out of the coldest place in WA. So kind of adds to the element of resilience.
Yeah.
That's really purposeful. We literally have emails from parents saying, I've got my son back, I've got my daughter back after 3 days, because it's purposeful. So we're away from general day-to-day life. We have a nutritionist who does food, so the food's legit, because I can't do proper dodgy camp food. They're running hard. There's like paintballing and archery tag, but then the presentations that we do in schools are embedded in the camps. So resilience and mental health is the focus for the July camp. The summer camp we do in January is a healthy relationships camp. So we're dealing with bullying, respect, dating relationships for the older ones, friendships for the younger ones. So yeah, we're really purposeful in what we do on the camps.
Do you see big transformational differences in individuals during that short time frame?
We do, even more so if they come over a longer period.
Yep.
But absolutely, like, you have kids rock up. I'm really observant, so I see things a lot. You kind of have to be if you're overseeing stuff like that. Because last year was the first year we split the age bracket, because we got to like 55 kids on a camp, which is too many to be able to ensure that it's really, really safe. So we split the age bracket. So we have a junior camp, 11 to 13, and a senior camp is 14 to 17. And in that time frame, you see kids that turn up who really low self-esteem, not okay, struggling, not interacting with anyone, etc. And they've made friends by the end of the camp, or there's kind of real revelations that come as a result of, the experience on camp, or even maybe just afterwards, where we get the emails from parents or individuals personally emailing. One of the stories that we share is a 17-year-old girl 3 years ago came on a camp and got to the end of the camp and emailed me the day after saying, "You don't know this, but I had a plan to take my own life the day before camp. I can't believe in 3 days I've got hope and I've got purpose." She now leads on every camp. So these beautiful moments.
Man, that story just gave me shivers.
And we get them all the time now. One of them just on the camp, just gone. I was pushing myself too hard and I got sick as a dog by the end of the night before I left. Sat down with a guy who'd come on camp and had been coming for about 3 years as well. He came, and every camp he comes, he's sponsored. So we're always kind of looking for sponsorships, and we're able to sponsor him for every camp, because he's literally been caring for his mum, since like 4.
Wow.
And he finally, we sat down together, first time coming back as a leader. And he's like, I came on the first camp just to get away from the environment that I was in. Got home, my best friend took her own life the day before my birthday. I planned to take my life after my birthday, and I sat down and read the notes from camp, and that's what saved me. And so then has come back to every subsequent camp, and is now literally in the last camp was the first time, and already coming back on the next one as a leader. These people experiencing that change and recognizing the value that they have, and they're wanting to turn around and help others do the same.
Yeah.
That's
Man, it makes you think, like, how many people struggled and took their own life, for example, when you were a kid. I want to know about your process in school. What was going on in your head, and what were you struggling with?
Again, not knowing what was happening was hard, because having because I speak all the way from, we have an early childhood specialist who does pre-primary to year 3, and I do the year 4s and up. And even when I'm speaking to year 3s and 4s, I'll be like, who knows what anxiety is? And 90% of hands go up. Who knows what depression is? 90% of hands go up. And they give me definitions. So they understand and they know. And we can say, I'm not sure that's a good thing. I think awareness is important, because I had no idea. I remember one morning feeling so sick that I vomited on my bed as I was making my bed in the morning. My dad walked in, and because my dad's like, hardcore army man, I literally said, "It's okay, Dad. I'm going to go to school." I'm vomiting while I'm explaining to Dad that I'm going to keep going. And he's like, he let me stay home that day, which was very rare. And And I have a beautiful relationship with my dad now, by the way, like really, really beautiful relationship. And he always loved me. He's just, hardcore army man, Polish generation. So, yeah.
And you were sick with that anxiety or depression feeling?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I woke up feeling sick every single day of my high school life. So it was a very traumatic experience because there were so many guys that were bullying me. It was everywhere. So every class, every break, there was, and then I get home, and because parents divorced and mum left and dad disappeared into work because that was his identity and kind of his escape. And I'd get home and my grandma would be making me dinner, and then she'd leave and go home and look after her sick, her partner, my granddad, who had Parkinson's at the time. And so then I would go, basically my brother just graduated. So I literally from like 13, 14 onwards would spend most nights alone. And so I went from this difficult environment at school to this difficult environment at home, that, had kind of different impacts. So loneliness was a big factor for me for a long time.
Just having no one to talk to.
Yeah.
And
I suppose not being modelled to me, but then not knowing the importance of talking and discussing your stuff, like, expressing things, not suppressing and bottling things up, etc. And so I just was in such turmoil all the time, felt alone, felt like no one cared, felt like I had no value. All of these beliefs that you form because of the experience that you're in. And not a single adult ever asked if I was okay. And no one ever came into the school to talk about anything that we address, and no one in the school talked about it either. It was just put your head down, do your work, let's stop the fighting. That was it. And so I was, and what's interesting is for me that the coping mechanisms I use were all screen related. And so that's a part of why my story connects to this next generation coming through, because so many of their coping mechanisms are screen related.
And I guess that's that sign of loneliness as well, because it's just you and your phone.
Yep. And perpetuates the loneliness. It gives you this false sense of connection, but it's not real connection. So you don't get the benefits of connecting to people, because we're designed to do life in community. It doesn't work being isolated. We saw what happened in COVID. And in fact, you could argue that a lot of the issues that have gotten worse are because of COVID, because of the isolation that we experienced, even though it was short compared to other states. So it was a massive factor for me.
With your high school journey, you were saying in year 7, your friends literally left you and turned on you. When did this whole mental health problem became a true issue to you? Was it that time, year 7, or was it a bit further on?
I don't know if there's a particular point. It would have started with that, because they didn't just leave me. A game of basketball turned to a game of keepy off, and the guy had the ball didn't like the fact that I caught up to him, so he started throwing punches and they all jumped in. And then they bullied me till the end of the year. So it wasn't just they left me, they turned on me. That's why I didn't trust anyone for a year and a half. That's why I didn't have any friends, because I was scared of it happening again. So, a lot of stuff eventuated from there. It essentially started there. Whether it probably didn't hit its lowest point until probably year 9. And even though I found a friendship group, and by year 12 we had the largest group in the whole year, no one had each other's back. They weren't real friends.
So I even find, even through school, no matter what happens, no matter if you're the quickest kid, slowest kid that sits in the library at lunch, there's a label on your head from literally day one. And I find that stays with you until you're in the real world, I guess.
Yep.
Did you find your label was flicked on in a very negative way in year 7?
Well, high school, I'm old enough, high school started in year 8. So I was, and literally the label was, I was the kid that got bullied, because there was so many that bullied me. I don't think I had any other label other than that. I was the loser kid that got bullied.
Right. You were saying that your grandma essentially saved your life. I want to know about that. What did she do? Why did she do it? And how did this all come up?
She just loved. So there's a lot of research around the fact that one healthy relationship with a trusted adult, like, dramatically reduces, risky behavior, impacts mental health, etc. From when I was 3 onwards, I was sent to her place every weekend. When I could choose, I kept going, because it's the only place I felt safe, like truly, truly safe. And so I'd spend the whole 6-week holidays there. So it was.
Why
like
do you think you felt safe there compared to your own home?
She's just loving.
Okay.
She was still to this day. I've never met anyone who was just so naturally loving and giving. She passed away at 93, so she had a long innings. In her 80s, like there were kids. I remember walking in. That was would have been 10, 15 years ago. Walking in, and there was a spot where my brother and I had a photo up on above the fireplace, which never worked. And I remember walking in one day, and there were 2 random photos of kids next to us. I'm like, who the heck are they? Oh, they're the kids from over the back, and they come over here, and
Wow.
they need me to put a Band-Aid on. Or she became like the neighborhood nurse. It was just so naturally. She was a nurse in Germany during World War II. That kind of idea of just naturally loving and caring and giving, that was just her through and through. She was so self-sacrificial, and so that nature of wanting to reach out and help people is very much, it came from her for me.
Was there specific things that she did? Like, was it a communication thing or just simply having...
She had a real thick German accent.
Right.
And in fact, I didn't really talk to her about much, because even in my 20s, I remember sitting down and saying, Oma's German for grandma. That was Oma, but Oma was because I couldn't say Oma when I was a kid, so Oma stuck. So Oma is the nickname we gave her. Oma, I made this mistake. I did this. Oh, no, you didn't know. Like she literally thought I was perfect, which in one sense is lovely to have someone love you that much, but in another sense isn't real. And so, I couldn't have a real conversation with her, because she would just be like, no, you didn't do that. I'm like, I did. So because a part of that, I meant that I couldn't talk to her about stuff, but she just loved. So she would literally come over once parents divorced, and my dad would leave at whatever time for work. My grandma would literally come over at 6:30 a.m. to bring me breakfast in bed, to get me out of bed. And when I got home in the afternoon, she was making me dinner. So she literally just provided and loved and supported without ever even talking about anything.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were saying that you planned suicide. How old were you then?
15.
15. Why?
Things hit a point. I had found a community in a church. So the extended version, which I don't get to tell very often, 2 weeks after Mum left, I walked. Videos were screens.
Yep.
Movies were my escape. And my first job was in a video store at 15. And so back in the way, there used to be things called video stores.
I still remember them.
I can't believe I have to explain what video stores are to young people. It's ridiculous. It's so much better than streaming. You guys, everyone under the age of a certain age have no idea what they're missing.
I remember going to Video Easy with Mum.
It was way better than streaming.
Finding the best Scooby-Doo movie.
That's right. Just looking on the shelf. I would spend hours looking on the shelves and choosing what you want. Especially when I was going to my grandma's for the entire weekend. I'd spend like 2 hours choosing 7 movies and then watch them on repeat over the weekend. Not great to be in front of screens that long, but that's another conversation. And 2 weeks after Mum left, walking to a new video store to find movies that we hadn't seen. And there was a very attractive woman behind the counter. And so I asked to help out as a 13-year-old. And she said yes.
Smooth.
Thank you. I was helping out for, only a couple of weeks. And she's like, what do you do Saturday nights? I'm like, I sit at home, watch movies on my own. It's like, oh, why don't you come to youth? So she picked me up, car full of girls. It smelled incredible. You don't. My brother and I, that's it at home. So this whole sitting in the back, in the middle, surrounded by attractive women, and it all smelled good. I was like, what is this? And so I kept going and kind of found a bit of an identity there. But then the girl that I liked when I was 15 found out that I liked her and turned the whole youth group against me. And that was the night where, because it was kind of the last remaining place that I felt like I've kind of fit in somewhere, or I'd found a place where I can be accepted. So that was kind of the real kind of point where this is it. Things didn't really get better until I got out of school.
Do you reckon it was a fair bit of emotion wrapped up, or it was that build up of the 1%ers over time?
It was definitely built up. And I suppose when you feel like you've got this one place where you can fit in and where you can belong, and then you lose that one place, and you feel like you've lost all hope.
And you got nothing left. Yeah.
Nothing left. Didn't have friends. Didn't connect to anyone in the family. My lifeline, in a sense, was Sandra, her name was, who would pick me up and take me to youth. And there was no
Sorry, is youth a community group or something?
a youth group in a church.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I just because it was my last remaining lifeline. So then I stopped going for a year or two, and eventually kind of came back. I stayed connected to Sandra to a degree, but stopped going. Yeah, so that meant that things kind of got worse.
Yeah, right. I wasn't taught about mental health much growing up in school. I didn't have anyone outside of school come in and talk about it. So I found mentally I was okay in school. But obviously with people finishing school, not knowing a sense of direction, some people drift away from their friends, family, that awkward transition, as you would probably know, with school, adulthood. What would be your guidance for an individual, a young individual just finishing school? Because obviously there's therapy and stuff like that, but I hear a lot that it's bloody expensive.
It is. And there's big wait lists as well.
Where do you go if you're not prepared to lash out $200 on a 1 hour conversation with someone that's not guaranteed?
Yep.
Like, how?
I think it's good to note, firstly, that you can go to a GP and get like a mental health plan, which does make it cheaper. I got to the end of last year and knew that I wasn't in a good place. When you've been there for long enough or extended periods in your life, you can sense it and you can feel it coming. And so I knew I wasn't okay. So my brother's a clin psych, and so I called him. I was like, give me a really good psych. And so I started seeing someone at the start of the year and went and got a mental health plan that covers, I think, 8, and then you can extend it to another 6. And that literally cuts like almost half the cost.
Wow.
So it's really good to know that, really important to know that. It can still be pricey depending on the situation that you're in. I don't say this because it's not a, hey, look at us and look at me. And I've had people say, like, I've even had some people say I went to a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and you're the only one that's helped me. And all it is just like looking at things practically, and pointing towards what can we do that practically can make a difference. Things like food, exercise, sleep, still talking, whether it's just a friend or whatever, getting stuff out and not bottling things up. The relationships you have around you, like there are real practical things you can do little by little. Anyone that says to me, whether I'm struggling with anxiety, I've got this going on or whatever, I'm like, food, exercise, sleep, they are my go-tos.
Is that something that helps you through 100%. Your mental health?
Big time. Yeah. Because the food you put in dramatically changes how you feel. Like 90% of our serotonin is in the gut. And so we want to make more serotonin. What kind of food you eating? Anytime someone says to me they're anxious, I'm like, what did you eat today? Get into the gym this afternoon. Because if you're eating the right foods and you've got more of amino acid in your system called tryptophan, and you get into the gym, all of your amino acids are poured into the muscles except that tryptophan. So you get not only get endorphins like any exercise, you get a boost of serotonin when you walk out of the gym. And so food and exercise, but then funnily enough, the body uses serotonin to make melatonin, so it can actually help your sleep as well.
Right, because that's something I've always thought of, because I've always been mentally okay, let's just say that. And I think that's, because you mentioned healthy foods, I didn't know that. So with someone that may be struggling with anxiety, depression, or any other mental health problem, do you think is there a certain part of the sleep, food, and exercise you would recommend start on?
Food.
Yep. Why is that?
I remember, so a self-esteem session that we do is probably the most important, in my opinion. And I remember, it was 10 years ago, and I was doing a session for a group of models, 14 to 24-year-old models, and one of them, who was a professional model at 24, came up to me and said, clinically depressed, my story resonates with yours. Can we do like a one-on-one? And so we did 1 hour. Literally, all we did was 1 hour. And we basically talked about food the entire hour. Cut these foods out and add these foods in.
Yeah.
Because there are a group of foods called good mood foods that literally can increase serotonin.
And is this someone, like anyone can search this up?
Yeah. Just search up good mood foods. A lot of them are fat-based because the brain's made 60-70% of fat. There are certain foods to reduce, and some people are more sensitive than to others, but gluten, sugar, dairy, and to reduce, not to completely cut out unless you have a serious condition. and then adding in certain foods and like looking at like a meal, for example, and the plate being 50% nutrient dense carbs, but then like really good sources of protein, because the tryptophan's in the protein, especially meat. It's hard to get it with outside of meat. There's ways. And then like 25% fat. And so eating that way and having certain types of foods. And she literally in 3 days texted me and said, thank you so much. I'm on the way to the gym. I'm going to put with my psych this afternoon. That will always stick with me because it's such a practical example of changing the food that you're eating in 3 days changed the nature of how she felt. And it's, you know, you think about the fuel that we're putting into our body. Yeah. The analogy of fuel makes a massive difference.
Even like the amount of processed foods these days is scary.
Yep.
I want to touch on sleep.
Uh-huh.
How many hours do you think a young person should be getting a night on average? Because obviously it depends on the person, etc.
Depends on person, depends on age. I can't think off the top of my head the exact amounts that are prescribed, but if you're just aiming for 8, because it's kind of 7 to 8 or 8 to 10, or if you're aiming for 8 and you're getting 8, there are 2 periods at night time. Having a 9-month-old at home and being the CEO of a business means that, you know, I've been working till about 12 o'clock every night, so I'm missing out on some of these key periods, and that won't be a forever plan. But 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is where the body and brain repairs itself.
Sorry, 2 a.m.
10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
I think it's 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. is where the body repairs itself, and then 12 a.m. I've been listening to podcasts for 10 years. Yeah. Back before podcasts were cool. Someone put me onto a book called The Mood Cure, which basically talked about the psych in the States, was talking about how the bad mood epidemic sweeping the world is because of the food we eat. So the Mood Cure by Dr. Julia Ross is worth reading. That changed my whole perception. And then I was put onto a podcast called Underground Wellness. American guy named Sean Croxton, who was like, yo, what's up, yo, like that. But he would interview guys who've been studying their fields for 30 or 40 years. So he did an incredible job at unpacking all of this stuff that is now kind of becoming mainstream. But I remember a podcast saying that it takes about 7 years of what we're talking about here. It'll finally become mainstream when people start talking about it, and even GPs will probably start recommending some stuff. And so like something around, like all the stuff around sleep I've heard for the last 5 or 10 years. And so you have circadian rhythms where at night time your melatonin is meant to be high, cortisol is meant to be low. People who can't sleep, it's usually in reverse. So cortisol's high, melatonin's low, then they tend to feel groggy in the morning. So if we can't go to sleep, there's all of these, we got a whole session on sleep. There's all these practical points that you can do.
It'd be good to touch on a future episode just specifically on sleep, because I feel like it's a massive topic.
It is. Yeah. It is. Especially if you struggle to sleep. I could lie on the floor and go to sleep right now. And I've always been like, well, not always. Ever since probably the last 15 years, I've been like that.
Yeah.
And this is from a teenager where I'd lie in bed until 12 a.m. and couldn't sleep, as a kid and a teenager. So you can shift it and you can change it. Things like changing the temperature of the room, blocking out light, getting off screens, getting red light, because red light stimulates melatonin, adding magnesium, because we're all deficient in magnesium, makes a massive, I've literally had principals go, oh my gosh, you have changed my world, because I recommended one single product that you can get from a naturopath that has high levels of magnesium, and it's got to be powder. So things like that. There are things you can do to change.
So many little things that someone could implement.
And it's all the little 1%ers, food, and then exercising, gym 3 to 4 times a week.
Hell yeah.
And then sleep sometimes fixes itself when you fix the first 2. But this all makes a difference, and I know people that I'm one of them. If I stop going to the gym, I get an injury. I've got scoliosis, so I've popped out my L3, 4, 5, and sacrum numerous times. I just came off 2.5 weeks ago. I woke up, my sacrum was popped out, and I lost my voice. So that was an interesting.
What, just while you slept?
I had a bombshell dropped on me the day before, and my body fully freaked out, like no joke. So I had to cancel a 2-hour resilience workshop with an international accounting firm, which sucked. And then I had to fly to Esperance that night with a popped out sacrum. So I had 2 emergency chiropractic sessions that day to try and bring a bit of alignment, but didn't come good until about Tuesday. I was there the following week. But I know if I stop moving, then I'm done.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I'm massive into my gym and running. Yep. And even that mentally is so rewarding.
It is.
I feel like it's definitely underspoken, underthought of, if that makes sense.
Even with running, you're getting your endorphins. Any movement or exercise you do, yoga, Pilates, you're getting endorphins that are released. The difference with the gym is that you get that extra bonus serotonin, which you need, because that's anyone who's struggling. We need to boost serotonin, or the good mood hormones at least anyway. So serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. We need to boost them in healthy ways so that we can, it starts to have an impact on how we feel, generally speaking.
Yeah, very valid. I want to know, what do you do to look after yourself now?
I'm in a bit of a deficit at the moment. I'm aware of my deficit, at least.
Right.
So, I've kind of we're on the precipice after 13 years of getting our charity status. So it's been a long journey. We operate as a business for 11 years, decided we need to be a charity. And it's taken 2 years to get to where we are. And as I'm told, we'll start 2025 as a charity. So it means that I've been kind of holding everything together as the CEO, as the guy who runs the ship. We have over 50 team members.
Wow.
We're in 3 to 13 schools a week, flying on Sunday to New South Wales because I've been going there once a term. Looks like Adelaide and Melbourne might be starting to pick up as well. Next year might be South Africa and UK. I went to South Africa in 2020 and they've wanted me to come back since. And I spoke in a prison. The last 2 years I spoke at Wooroloo prison, and someone who was in there just over a year ago, literally emailed me like a month ago and went, I finished my stay in the UK and now I'm out and I want you to come over and speak in schools with me over here. So
wow.
I don't know where it's going, but
well, congratulations, man.
Look,
seems like you got a good amount of momentum and a good team behind you.
Exactly, and we couldn't do what we do without the team that we have now. But it means that I'm in a deficit. I've been holding things for too long. I've been, 3 kids with a 9-month-old at home.
As well as this business.
As well as the business. And so to be honest, I try and balance things out. Because I'm working late all the time, I'll go to the gym during the day.
So like even planning this interview, when you said, no weekends, I was like, man, hats off to you. That is such a good skill. Just be like, no.
I can't. I grew up, again, love my dad, very close relationship with my dad. I grew up with an absent father. And so I made a promise that I wouldn't be that. Sunday I'm flying to New South Wales. I'll be there for 9 or 10 days or so. I'll do that once a term. That's it. Like if I travel during the week. My 13-year-old's with a previous marriage, and so I get him Saturday afternoon. He goes back Tuesday morning, and so I don't remember the last time I did something on a Saturday night. It's fine. That's my time with him. We'll watch a movie. Like I'm literally, as a movie guy, I've got all this long list of movies that I'm taking him through at the moment. He loves the movies I love, which is working for me.
That's cool.
But that's and I know his love language is quality time. So then that's what we're doing. And I have a beautiful, both the 13-year-old and 4-year-old. I have a great relationship. 4-year-old is a weapon, and so he is full on. But when the weekend comes, he is a daddy's boy. He's all over me.
That's so cool.
And but that's important to prioritize.
So moving forward, where do you see yourself mentally, or your future vision on where you feel Armed for Life will go?
For me personally, all I am is the CEO and the lead presenter, and every single other role is filled by other people. Once we can get funding is the problem. We've been a money in, money out organisation for 13 years because we're a business. So probably hit in June. We're the single organisation that I know that's going into schools that isn't a charity. We're the only one. Every other organisation is a charity, and so they have...
What do you need to do to become that charity? Because you imagine need sponsors and stuff to keep it all going, or
to become a charity? No, you go through the process of applying. You need to apply with Department of Mines here, then ACNC, which is the national registration, and then you get your DGR status, which is the tax deductibility.
Yep.
And so we've got DMIRS. We're now just waiting on ACNC, and then apparently DGR is pretty easy. But moving from a business to a charity, that's the hard part. Whereas if you just start from a charity from the get-go, fine. But swapping over has been the difficulty in figuring out what to do. And so there's been a very, very long process there.
Especially if you have employees under you. Imagine that process might be a bit tricky.
I think so. I think it's more establishing a board and blah, blah, blah. And it's all, there's bits and pieces. But me just switching out my role and doing less so that I can maintain what I'm doing and not burn out. As well as relationships. Because that's one thing I've found too with, when was the last time were you truly present
in your relationship, whether it was your son, daughter, mum, dad, partner, whatever. Like when you got so much stuff on your mind, I have to do this. Oh, I have this email to reply to. Oh, this phone call. It's like, but put all that aside, focus on the now. Because the now is certain. The future is to a degree uncertain. Yeah, I feel like that's been a big learning curve for me the past few months.
I mean, I think I like the concept of a journey. We're all learning, we're all growing. No one ever gets there, no one ever makes it. And I think something about, obviously what they refer to with being present is that when you spend time in the future, you tend to be anxious. You spend time in the past, you tend to be depressed. Mindfulness is about being present now. It almost has to be a conscious choice because we get pulled in those directions all the time. I know I do. And so being conscious about being mindful and being present.
As you were saying, that awareness too.
Self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools that we can possibly have because it means that you are aware when the anxiety comes, when the depression comes, when I'm not being present, and if someone kind of brings it to you, if you have awareness, you kind of sit with it and go, is that true? Oh, it is true. Yeah, I need to change that.
This may be a dumb question. How do I be more aware?
Practice.
Journaling.
I've found my awareness more through counselling and journaling are kind of similar in a sense where you're kind of getting stuff out and figuring yourself out as you get it out and as you go. Mine kind of an incredible counsellor at 24, a decent psych at 35, and the psych I started seeing at the start of this year has been incredible. That process of getting stuff out and becoming aware happens when you're talking and getting stuff out, but if you have a good counsellor or psych, then they can kind of help you a little bit as well. And or what about this? And have you thought about this? And that brings awareness. Because once you become aware of it, awareness isn't enough because you've got to act on it and try and change things. But that awareness is really key. And some people, good thing about self-awareness is then you become more aware of others too. And some people have no awareness of others so they're probably not very self-aware themselves.
Yeah, good point. With going into so many different schools, traveling very broad, what do you feel are a few of the most common mental health problems you may see?
Look, I think we know how prominent anxiety and depression are now for everyone at every age. We know that in 2013, when smartphones were released, there was a spike in both anxiety and depression, a massive spike.
Did that correspond with suicide rates?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I would suggest so.
Yeah.
We know suicide's always been around. We know that it's been a factor. We know certain brackets of society are more susceptible to suicide. Men in their 40s, it leads the numbers, but teenagers are pretty high too. And the reality is that, there's a psych in New York named Dr. Nicholas Kardassis, and he's written a book called Glow Kids, and he talks about how brains aren't ready for interactive screens till 12. So we have, he's got 1-year-olds in his office unlocking phones. There's a massive problem with, and look, parents do the best that they can do, but the reality is that some parents give screens over as a babysitter. And so from a very, very young age, TV, and Dr. Kardassis says TV is not the problem. We all grow up on TV. It's the interaction with screens, and you probably include gaming in that too, where you're interacting with what you're looking at the screen. That literally changes brain chemistry and has an impact on brains.
So you definitely see that relation between that device usage and depression, anxiety rates.
It's a huge connection point.
Right, okay.
There's a reason why our camps are successful, because on this first morning I put a bucket out after I do a screen addiction presentation. So put your phone in the bucket if you want 500 points for your team. And 90 to 95% of people put their phones in the bucket. They don't die in 2 days, funnily enough. They're okay without their screen for 2 days.
Yeah.
The remaining 5% just get nothing from the camp because they're glued to it, because they're fully addicted.
That's so scary, man.
Yeah.
Especially with how addictive TikTok, like all these reels that are coming up and stuff. Yeah.
The concept of doom scrolling and going down that rabbit hole and spending hours at a time in front of that screen. Again, we have to bring more awareness to it and be purposeful about spending certain time away. I unfortunately have to be on my screen for work and for business. I try and be off it as much as I can.
So do you recommend, I wouldn't say recommend for someone who may be struggling with anxiety, depression, or another mental health concern,
Yep.
definitely lowering screen time rates would help.
It's a part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we're bouncing over the place a little bit because there's so much to touch on in a short space of time. But the reality is that it's not going to make anything worse.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it sits in that space where we're probably addicted and don't know it. So try and remove your phone for a certain period of time. It feels uncomfortable because like a part of myself is gone. That alone should be scary.
Yeah.
So I'm like, crap. I feel like, where is it? And for me, it's more. I tell myself it's more that I'm not contactable by my team or by my family or by my wife. But the reality is that it's more than that. It's an extension of us, and it shouldn't be that way. We need to get to the point where it's not, where it's charging outside of the room, where it's, et cetera, et cetera. My phone, people complain all the time. I tried to call you and I couldn't get you. My phone goes on airplane mode if I'm not using it.
Yeah.
And because I'm then fully detached from it, it's fully on airplane mode. Absolutely, it's in my pocket because, I've got to...
Even those vibrations, like, I have to say I'm guilty. Think, like, your brain thinks your phone's vibrating in your pocket.
Vibration. Yeah.
And then you check it, like, oh, I got a notification. And you look at it and it's like, no notification. You're like, oh my God.
Yep.
That is bad.
And look, this is not the podcast for it, but, there's a whole conversation about the fact that, Wi-Fi impacts prostate cancer, et cetera, because it's in our pockets all the damn time. Why does it impact guys more than females? Because we wear it in our pockets and women don't. That's my personal theory. So it's always an airplane mode for me in my pocket.
Yeah, very valid. To wrap things up, if you could go back to your younger self, whether it's your year 10 self, graduating school self, what advice would you give yourself and why with the knowledge you have now?
3 things. One is that you're valuable. I didn't believe that until I had this turning point when I was 18. And I legitimately thought I was worthless. No one would miss me if I was gone. The kind of things you hear from someone when they have a plan to take their own life. Every single person is valuable, and I find myself saying that every single presentation that I run, trying to instill the fact that you have value, inherently have value, regardless of what people have said to you or what you've done, doesn't change the fact that you are valuable and you are worthwhile. And the second thing is that you need to get help. You need to talk to someone about it. It is healthy and normal and for a functional human being to talk about the stuff that they're going through. You don't deserve to be treated this way, because we internalize things. We take it on and kind of think that we believe we deserve how we're being treated. Those are the 3 things that I'd say to myself. 3 things. Yep.
For someone who's maybe struggling severely with mental health, even considering taking their own life, what resources can they turn to right now to help them overcome this if they do not have anyone to talk to? Yeah,
I mean, it's good to mention that. I think that talking to someone in person is always better.
Yeah, why is that?
It's something about the connection thing. So being online, being on the phone, it's not a real connection. Being face to face with a person and being in proximity, you I think has a greater impact. It can be more confronting, so it can be harder. And so if we don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine. The priority is just getting it out.
Yep.
Right. I love Inside Out movies are very, very good, and Inside Out 2 I think is probably even better than the first one, to be honest. In terms of, there's a point where they all get put in a jar and they're like, I'm a bottled emotion. Like it's what we do is we bottle things up and we push it down. And one of the guys that I connected with in the UK a couple of years ago, his motto was express, don't suppress. I love that.
Express, don't suppress.
Yep. We have to get stuff out, because if we don't get it out, we get stuck in it. So we have to find a way to get it out, whatever that is. And so in person's better, and if not in person, online. Kids Helpline, there can be a wait time. But Lifeline, you'll always get through. The lead trainer for Lifeline, Brooke, has come on as a presenter for us this year. And so I know, because she trains all the receivers and the guys that people are taking the calls. She's very, very good. So they're all getting good training. And you can always get through on Lifeline. So whatever number is out there specific to the experience that we're having, because there's lots of different numbers that we can call, Lifeline is a good go-to.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I'm so grateful. Thank you very much, Adam.
A pleasure, man.